you know. And even growing up, I always told myself I would never move to Jamaica. And here I am, 19 years later. Yeah.
Amazing. Welcome to the Immigrant Experience in America, an immigrant human library, where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants in the United States and around the world. Listen in as we add another story to our immigrant human library. Today we have Winthrop from Travelers Beach Resort at Rob on YouTube. Welcome, Winthrop.
Thank you for having me.
I am excited to learn about your third culture person experience going to Jamaican and Fijian parents born in New York. Please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about who Winthrop is.
Sure. So my name is Winthrop Wellington. And as Dawn mentioned, I was born and raised in New York. And I moved to Jamaica in 2006, so about 19 years now. And I've been fortunate enough to call Negril, Jamaica, my home. So it's been, I feel like I'm always transitioning, but for sure, the first few years was a very, very interesting, very interesting transition for myself from, I guess we'll get into that, right? The business side of things, but then also the social side, development side of things as well.
Yeah. Okay. So let's add a little bit more about what life was like growing up in New York. I imagine that when you come home, it was a different country at home and going to school, trying to just be an American kid. Like, what was that like for you?
Sure. So, I mean, for me, I was growing up in the 90s, late 80s and 90s. And I would say that there was a clear difference in what was being taught at home and the values that was being taught at home, and then also from what was being expected of me as a kid in school. And I couldn't articulate it the way that I am now, but there was just, for sure, this sense of wanting to be like everybody else and wanting to assimilate. I didn't know what that word was at the time, but I wanted to be like an American, like everybody else around me was. But I knew innately as a kid that home was very different from what was being taught in school. And I felt like there was this, not need, but like I almost needed to kind of hide my culture in like going to school in terms of, as opposed to being proud of it and bringing it to like my friends. And what ended up happening and this wasn't on purpose, but like you end up just becoming friends with, or really good friends with like Caribbean students. And that's kind of what I kind of lean towards. And even now, like I have a very diverse group of friends, but like it just worked out that way. Like some of our best friends, like their parents are Antiguan, Haitian, Guyanese. And it's just interesting, like now that I'm thinking about it, like that's kind of what I was drawn to because of this like similar upbringing in the household, similar cultural expectations and experiences. And I think that's what I related to. But then in the other side, like I said, I wanted to assimilate and I wanted to be American, and I was, like that's what I was mostly being exposed to when I left my home, which was mainly a Jamaican upbringing. I would say, like I went home to Jamaica for sure, from all the food that we ate to my dad yelling at us in patois, to even like, obviously my dad's friends as well. There was like a great Caribbean community. So I should also mention, I think it's an important part of this, is like I grew up on Long Island in New York. And so it was a very diverse experience. And I think that was also really awesome. I don't know what exactly reasons why my dad chose to move to Long Island and to raise us there. But I think that was one of the best decisions that he made as a man, as a father, because we grew up with everybody, white, Black, Caribbean, Hispanic, Chinese, and you name it. Like we had everybody that went to our school, and then me and my brothers were all athletes. So all the sports that we played was extremely diverse. And it wasn't even like a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially with like now, it wasn't like a thing that you even talked about. That's just what the way life was. Everybody came together. Like, we all went to each other's houses for sleepovers. Like I said, we played sports together. We did Boy Scouts together. All these extracurricular activities, and that really played into my development. Then I obviously brought the Jamaica side to it when I engage in those activities with my friends and schoolmates.
For our international audience, know a bit about New York because it's such a big city. Like, I think everybody around the world knows about New York, at least the name and the vibrancy of the city. Tell us a little bit about like the different parts of New York and why Long Island was like such a unique place.
Sure. So some New Yorkers don't even consider Long Island part of New York, so we won't even get into that. But New York is, I guess, made up of like three distinct areas. You got like New York State, which is north of the city, north of Manhattan, I say. Then you have like the city, which is made up of five boroughs, which is Manhattan, Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, and Brooklyn. I almost forgot Brooklyn. And then there's Long Island, which Queens and Brooklyn are on Long Island. So Long Island is made up of two major counties, which is Nassau County, which is where I grew up, and then Suffolk County, which is more east. And in general, like Long Island is more residential suburbs. Like that's what you think of when you think of Long Island. And that's the environment that I grew up in. And the proximity to the city is what a lot of people make Long Island very appealing, especially to families, because a lot of people, grown-ups at the time, they lived on Long Island, raised their families in Long Island, and then went to school, went to work in the city and commuted back to Long Island in the evenings. And that's kind of the makeup of Long Island. And so, like, even if I look at my friends now and you think of like their lifestyle, it's like they've kind of migrated into that. Like the lifestyle of growing up on Long Island. It's like you grow up on Long Island, you either go to school upstate for college or somewhere else, and then you move to the city after college, and then you do have your fun. You find your soulmate in the city, and then after you settle down and married and wanting to start a family, then you move back to Long Island, and that's the triangle of living on Long Island. That's what a lot of my friends have done, because it's like a really, I think, a very beautiful place and lifestyle, and it's a place that like I'm extremely, extremely proud to be from, and I think it really set me up for who I am and like helping me to find my identity and just having that very diverse upbringing amongst my classmates and my friends as well.
Yes, I was in the DC area for about over 10 years. And whenever I came across New Yorkers, there were the folks who were from Long Island who would point out I was raised on Long Island, so they wanted it to be known. That I never really got, but thanks for the explanation.
A lot of great people come from Long Island, like famous, really well off. I'm going to go through the list, but I don't want to forget a bunch of people. But kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So tell us a bit about mom's culture, because we're from Jamaica. We Jamaican heritage, and so we know the culture. Tell us a bit about how you blended like Fijian plus Jamaican. Like, how did you guys balance that?
Sure. So, as I said off camera, like I'm very proud of all three of the cultures that make up who I am: my American culture, Jamaican culture, and absolutely my Fijian, the second half of my blood, which is Fiji. So, bringing into like the geographical context, like Fiji is in the South Pacific. It's a series of, I think, 300 plus islands near Australia. And my dad always said, well, he didn't say this from my own observation. I can see why my dad had fallen in love with my mom and then also Fiji, because it is so similar to the Jamaican culture. And I went back as an adult in 2017, and that's kind of where I really started making connections from my own observations as an adult to Jamaica, and then also to my dad and his lifestyle and how he is. So even like the foliage, they have so many of the same similar plants that we have here. How they interact with each other, it was like such a family feeling. Going back and having been back since I was a kid, it was this it was this feeling of coming home, and I hadn't been back since I was a baby, and I felt like so comfortable around my aunties, my uncles, my cousins, and it was just really, really amazing. And the food is amazing as well. Very different from Jamaica, but it kind of really I saw myself in that country and in my cousins. And so growing up, my mom, the only exposure, the main exposure that I had to my Fijian culture was my mother. And then her youngest sister eventually moved to New York and lived with us for a while until now growing up. So it wasn't as prominent as I would say my Jamaican culture was growing up. And at one point, at most of my life, I should say, like my parents got divorced. So I was living with me and my brothers were living with my dad. And then we visited my mom on the weekends. So I say my relationship with the Fijian part has been more of an adult exploration, right? And that's kind of like how I like really grew into it and really started understanding it, especially going on that trip in 2017. But in school, I'm so proud to tell people I was from Fiji, and people were like, "What? Where? What is that?" kind of thing. Then I used to educate them. My dad, that was a travel agent as well. That's how my parents met. And so I always, because of that, I was always like very good at geography, and it always interested me. And so I was very happy and proud to kind of be educating people on the second half of my culture.
Nice. Beautiful, beautiful. Um, so talk about the transition. So, like, how did the whole idea, like, leaving what, 10 years ago?
Yeah. I always tell people that it was a very ad hoc, almost no thought put into it decision making process. I was in my senior year of college, and I studied finance, so I was looking to join these finance firms. And this was 06, right? Oh no, this was fall of '05, excuse me. And I was going through just different interviews, and I was in second round interviews with Morgan Stanley. And then everybody is like going through the rat race of trying to get jobs, and like all my roommates and stuff like doing like accounting, finance, all these business jobs. And I'm like, man, why am I doing this? Like, why am I going through this rat race where I have this opportunity in Jamaica to join my family's business? Because my dad started this business when I was 7, and it was something that he always talked about. And me and my brothers used to come down here during the summers, like traveling beach resort was just like a jump, right? And yeah, this was so my dad bought this property in '92 and then actually opened the business in '94. And so us growing up and coming down here as kids, my dad he'd be going around this jungle, and he was like, okay, this is where the lobby is going to be. We're going to put the pool here. And I'm talking about this is like 10, 15 years. And he just had the vision. And it was like just something so exciting to me and my brothers to always come down. And then like the next summer, the thing he said he was going to do, and like, just imagine what that does to a kid psychologically, right? Their parents, their dad, the hero is like saying he's going to do these things, and then you come back a year later and he's accomplished it. You put that building up and said he was going to do, and it just like speaks to his ambition, and that ambition kind of being instilled and put into our bloods and our mind. And I also learned to drive here as well because I was like starting at 11, and I used to pick up the trash and the pickup truck that we had, and my dad loved it because I would just go around and pick up the trash, but I loved it because I got to learn how to drive at 11 years old. And it just, like all these memories kind of, I'm sure came into that decision making back there. And I was just like, forget about it. I'm gonna come down, and I just stopped going through the whole process of applying for jobs. I just enjoyed the rest of my senior year because I decided I was going to move to Jamaica in May at graduation. And that's as far as I thought. And when they say like ignorance is bliss, like this is one of those situations. Like if I knew perhaps what I was going to be putting myself through, I probably wouldn't have done it. I really sat down and thought about like the culture shock, the leaving this fast-paced environment, coming down to not so fast-paced environment, and not having like especially at the time, the technology gap was huge, you know. And even growing up, I always told myself I would never move to Jamaica, and here I am, 19 years later. Yeah.
Amazing. So, me, right? Talk about that position. Like, what was it like for you leaving your life in New York
So,
and rooting? And I mean, you've been visiting, so you knew
right.
the culture. But what was that like transitioning here? Like, what were the struggles? You know, the happy places that you found along the journey.
So, as you said, like I knew the culture a bit, but I would a huge asterisk next to that. I thought I did, but I trust me. Vacationing here for 3 weeks a year as a kid, adolescent, is very different from living here. And I learned that the hard way. I learned that the hard way. And I always caution people about this. Look at Jamaica as this, from the vacation lens, right? As this utopia, as this place that's this and that, whatever they build up in their mind. You know, it's just not. It really, really isn't. And Jamaica isn't for everybody. The grill isn't for everybody. And I think it's important that people who are deciding or contemplating whether they want to move here or not, that they go through their own process beforehand. And because I've also seen so many failed transitions to Jamaica, so many failed entrepreneurs come down here to, especially Americans. They try to bring their Americanness, their American ways of doing business here, and it's I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but you make it a little bit more difficult than it might have to be, as opposed to adapting to the way things are. So, I caution people from my own experience because I made all those mistakes. I made the mistake of not taking the time to kind of really figure out, see myself in the position of being here a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. And then I also made the mistake of just thinking my way of doing things, the American way of doing things, is the way, the best way. And that's I think what made my transition to Jamaica so much harder. So if you'd imagine, I moved here at 22 years old from New York, and the way I looked at it in my eyes, like my friends were living in a dream. We all did well in school. Everybody got best jobs, best pay for that time period and that age. And I used to go back to New York probably monthly for the first 6 or 7 months that I was here. Maybe close to the first year, but whatever. The thing is like I was just had like incredible FOMO, and I felt like I was missing out on my friends and the experiences that they were having, and I just wanted to taste of it as much as I possibly could. But then after a while, I realized that if I don't just stay here for 6 months, like I'm never going to stay here. Like I'm always going to have one foot in and one foot out. And like this, if I want to make this business successful, if I want to make this experience of living in Jamaica successful, really have to like super, super commit. And what I was struggling with, as I was alluding to earlier, is both the social aspect of the doing business aspect of things. So for the doing business, it was a multitude of challenges that I was facing. Like I was never an entrepreneur. I never worked for anybody. I never worked for myself. And so and then I'm being groomed, if you will, to take over this property and to take over this business. And I had my academic education, but at the end of the day, like I didn't know what I was doing, and I had to learn. And so I was kind of battling that at the same time that I was also battling the culture, the business culture. So I would say the external business culture. So of banking, dealing with the government, and all of the frustrations that come with that, if you can imagine. And it was extremely challenging and frustrating, and it took me a while to get to a point of acceptance. And I think, again, I caution people and advise people, it's like you want to get there as quickly as possible and realize that You go into a bank or dealing with the government agency, and there are clear inefficiencies that you are experiencing, and you know that this wave might be a little bit better if you just made this tweak. Like, forget about it. You have to let it go because you got to realize you're trying to stick square peg in a round, and you're not going to change it. So it became, it should be, this is my advice, it's like it should be more of a mindset of adapting as opposed to opposing, as opposed to judging. Because if you do that, what you're going to do is frustrate yourself. You're not going to change how fast the teller moves on doing XYZ transaction. You're just not going to do it. You're not going to change the bank policy of having whatever ratio to every two bank tellers to every 1,000 customers. I'm exaggerating, but like that's the way it feels sometimes, right? And all the bureaucracy that goes with that. So it's like, what can you do while you're going through this process? How can you make it more efficient? How can you make your time and doing so more productive? And so it was dealing with that and it just not having the perspective to kind of understand frustration that I was going through. And then you also, I should say, I also had the frustrations of the internal cultural adjustments, right? And back then, this is early 2000s, like things were very different, I think, with Jamaica. And I would say more so for sure the team that we had here at Travelers. And you got to understand that my dad was running this property by himself, like totally by himself. So certain procedures and protocols weren't put in place. And I think a lot of the team took advantage of that, which made it very, I would say, like frustrating working with not the best people and not my dad not having the time to go through human resource process of getting the best people that he could. And so I think that also made it frustrating for me and going into this business and having to, we had good managers back then, 2 good managers that I did learn from that kind of set me up and which I definitely appreciate, but it was also very, as much as I say, adapt like on the external stuff is adapt as opposed to impose. That was hard. That was harder to do here, because you also knew that there was definitely you're doing something wrong, sort of thing. And it's just like, how do you get the culture to adjust to a more efficient way? Because you have more control on your own business than you do, say, like an external government organization kind of thing, as I was saying with the example. And then I guess the last aspect on the social part would be the actual socializing here and making friends and going after and having meaningful relationships down here. I think that's a part that a lot of people don't really take into consideration when considering moving to Jamaica. And again, I will also caveat that with saying that the early 2000s is very, very different than now. Just having a conversation with somebody about that there is so many more young people in Negril as opposed to back then. And the young people that were there here in Negril back then, it's just more transient, like people staying here, like guests staying at different hotels. We had spring break back then. And so you had a younger crowd in that sense, but there wasn't a younger residential crowd here. And so it was hard for me to make friends and to relate to people that were my age. So most of my friends were my dad's friends. That's who I like hung out with back then, which was great too, because with hanging out with people 20, 30 years senior, there was a lot of wisdom and life lessons that go along with that. So I think that also helped in my development as a young man. But nonetheless, that also made it hard to have friends my age that you can relate to and to have meaningful relationships with because there was also this thing, it's like, man, somebody wants something from you. Like, what is really the motive behind here? That sort of thing. But like now, like I said, I think there are a lot more people, more younger professional people who are here that you have an opportunity to cultivate relationships of that nature. So that was kind of, I would say, my first few years. And I could tell you, like, I was like depressed for sure, like being here and like kind of missing all those things and missing those kind of relationships. And I always tell people that I felt like I was getting stupider because like I wasn't being challenged intellectually. And that goes with especially I would say like having like challenging intellectual conversations. And I love the two escapes of that I had. As like I had my brothers here that I could speak to that could challenge me, and then we also had guests from all over the world that came in that had different perspectives than I did. Because like I don't want to just keep speaking with people who have the same mindset or like agree with me. Like I want to learn from somebody who thinks very different from me or has an opposite opinion from me. And like I just wasn't getting that. And so that was like a big motivation for me to big motivation for me to go to business school because and then also I think at the same time we had the financial crisis that we were going through and like business was horrible and I knew there was like a better way to do business. So I think those two things like really motivated me to go to business school and yeah, just kind of get me out of here for a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So you come after undergrad or okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I did 4 years here after college, and then I went to get my MBA after 4 years. Yeah.
So I wonder if you were in Kingston versus Negril. Do you think there is a different culture running a business in Kingston versus on Negril, the western side?
100% without question. There's no doubt about it. I think for business, I think for friendships, I think for relationships, for sure. Like there's no question about it. Like even like the talent pool that you have of people that you choose from to start a business, it's night and day with the grill and Kingston. I know people from Kingston think the grill is like a different country, like they don't come here. And they were like so far, yeah. But I would like as you asked that question, I would love there to be a day or time when the grill is looked at upon as a place for young, talented, educated individuals who would move here and come and see as a viable way to further themselves in life. But we don't necessarily have the infrastructure and the facilities that attract that type of talent. But I even think from even like a relationship standpoint, like being there, I would always say like if I was living in New York, I'd probably be married and have a family right now, and I would probably say the same thing might be true if I was living in Kingston as well. Like it's just a different kettle of fish on multiple perspectives. But at least that's what I think. But it's like I said, it's you're gonna be challenged to find people here that, especially if you're, and this is kind of just like worldly advice for people out there who are like, if you're like well traveled, you're educated, you're career driven, and then you're coming to Negril to find love, to find your counterpart. Good luck.
Join us again next time for part 2 of this episode. We thank our listeners around the world, and we appreciate your continued support as we build our human library. Please remember to give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, and circle of influence.